She whispered, I should stop, but her eyes moved closer, not away. And in that moment, I couldn't ignore what her silence was really saying. I never thought I'd notice her like that. She was just my friend's mom, warm, polite, always the kind of woman who carried herself with quiet grace. But something changed that evening, and I couldn't quite explain why. We were sitting around the table after dinner, plates half cleared, soft laughter fading as my friend wandered off to his room. She stayed behind, tidying up. The kitchen light above her flickered faintly, catching the delicate lines of her face in a way I hadn't noticed before. She wasn't just Mom anymore, she was a woman who carried stories in her eyes. She reached across the table to collect my glass. Our hands brushed, a simple accident, but for a split second, her fingers lingered. I felt the warmth of her skin against mine, light but undeniable. My chest tightened, and I wasn't sure if I should pull back or pretend it never happened. When I glanced up, her eyes met mine. Not casually, not the way adults look at kids they've known forever. This was different. Her gaze held steady, softer than I expected, like she was searching for something she shouldn't. I swallowed, suddenly aware of the silence between us. The faint scent of jasmine perfume clung to her as she passed by, stirring the air around me. It wasn't overpowering, it was subtle, like her. Yet it wrapped around me, drawing me into her presence. I tried to distract myself, fiddling with the edge of my sleeve, but my heart was thudding too loud, almost embarrassingly so. She set the dishes down, then turned back toward me. You're quiet tonight, she said with a small smile, almost teasing, but her voice carried a softness that made the room feel warmer than it should have. I'm just tired, I managed to reply, though it wasn't true. I wasn't tired, I was restless, caught in a moment I didn't understand. Her eyes lingered on me for just a breath longer before she nodded and moved past. But even as she did, I felt her presence follow, like a shadow I couldn't shake. It was nothing more than a glance, a brush of the hand, a moment too long between words. But it unsettled me. It made me wonder if I was imagining everything, or if she had felt it too. And though I tried to convince myself it was nothing, deep down, I already knew this wasn't the last time I'd feel that strange pull toward her. Later that night, the house was quiet. My friend had gone upstairs, music muffled through his door, leaving me alone in the living room with a book I wasn't really reading. The lamp beside the couch cast a low amber glow, and outside, the wind brushed against the windows in soft sighs. That's when she appeared again. Barefoot, her steps gentle against the wooden floor, she walked in with a cup of tea cradled in her hands. She looked surprised to see me still awake, though her expression softened almost instantly. You don't sleep early either, she asked, her voice a quiet murmur, careful not to disturb the silence of the house. I shook my head with a small smile. Guess not tonight. She sat down on the other end of the couch, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth radiating from her, but not so close that it could be mistaken for anything. It felt deliberate, measured. Yet it made me more aware of her than I had ever been before. For a while, we just sat there, the sound of her spoon gently stirring her tea filling the quiet. And then, almost naturally, we began to talk. Not about the small, meaningless things, but about the kind of truths people usually keep to themselves at this hour. She told me about her younger days, how she once dreamed of traveling, of painting by the sea, of living a life untouched by routine. Her eyes glimmered when she spoke, but there was a shadow too, regret, perhaps, or memories of promises left behind. I listened, not just with curiosity, but with an ache I couldn't quite name. She wasn't just telling stories, she was opening a window into herself, a part of her she didn't show in the daylight. At one point, she laughed softly, a sound more delicate than I'd ever heard from her. She placed her hand lightly on my arm, just for balance as she leaned back. The touch was fleeting, but it lingered on my skin, warming me long after she withdrew. The clock ticked on, unnoticed. The room felt smaller, as if the world outside had folded away, leaving only the two of us in that dim glow. I realized then that this wasn't simply a conversation. It was something deeper, something that stitched an invisible thread between us, delicate, fragile, and dangerous in the way it pulled me closer without permission. And as she set her cup down and looked at me, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them, I understood, this was no longer ordinary. It was becoming something else entirely. The night had stretched far longer than either of us expected. Our voices had softened into near whispers, the kind you use when you know the rest of the world is asleep. But then, without warning, the conversation trailed off. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, thick with something we hadn't named yet. I could hear the steady tick of the clock on the wall, each sound echoing like a reminder of time passing, of moments slipping away. She sat with her hands folded loosely in her lap, eyes lowered at first. But when she finally looked up, her gaze caught mine and held it. There was something raw there, something unguarded. For the first time, I saw her not as my friend's mother, not even as the woman who carried years of responsibility on her shoulders, but as someone who longed for connection, just as I did. Her lips parted, as if she was about to speak. For a heartbeat, I thought she might finally confess what we were both circling around. My chest tightened, my breath shallow, waiting. But then she stopped. She pressed her lips together, looking away quickly, almost as though she had betrayed herself just by thinking it aloud. I leaned forward, not to push her, but because I couldn't help it. The space between us felt charged, like the air before a storm. I wanted to tell her that I felt it too, that I wasn't imagining the way her eyes softened when they found me, or how her laughter came easier when we were alone. But the words stayed locked in my throat. Her fingers curled against the fabric of the couch, tightening just slightly, like she needed something to hold on to. I noticed how her breathing had changed, quieter, but deeper, as though she was fighting against the very thing pulling her closer. The lamp's glow caught the side of her face, outlining her features in soft amber. It was a portrait of conflict, strength in her posture, hesitation in her eyes. She wanted to step back, I could sense it. Yet she didn't. She stayed there, suspended in that silence with me. I didn't move either. I let the weight of the moment settle over us, knowing that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. It wasn't a confession. Not yet. But it was close enough to taste, close enough to leave me wondering if it was only fear that held her back, or if it was hope. The quiet stretched on, but neither of us pulled away. If anything, it felt as though we were both waiting, for the other to break first, for some small moment to decide what this really was. It came unexpectedly. She leaned forward to reach for a book on the table, one she had left there earlier. I reached at the same time, our hands colliding softly on the cover. Her fingers pressed against mine, warm and steady. For a split second, neither of us moved. I could feel the gentle lines of her hand, the delicate pressure of her fingertips resting across my knuckles. It wasn't forceful, wasn't deliberate, but it wasn't an accident either. Not when she held still. Not when her eyes lifted to meet mine at the same time. The room felt suddenly too small, too warm. My breath caught in my chest, and I realized my hand hadn't moved back either. I let it rest there, overlapping hers, the quietest declaration I could manage. Her eyes flickered, hesitation, longing, fear, and something else. She swallowed, her throat tightening slightly as she drew in a slow breath. The kind of breath you take when you're weighing what's right against what you want. Finally, after what felt like forever, she drew her hand back. But the withdrawal wasn't quick, it was lingering. Her fingers slipped slowly against mine, dragging warmth across my skin until the last contact fell away. And even then, it felt like her touch remained, imprinted against me. She leaned back, her posture composed, but her gaze betrayed her. She looked at me for a heartbeat too long, her lips parting ever so slightly before she pressed them together again. It was as though she had spoken 1,000 words without making a sound. I wanted to tell her I understood. That I felt it too, that quiet electricity threading itself between us. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, letting the silence hold it for us, because sometimes the things we don't say are louder than anything else. The lamp hummed faintly, the shadows across the room deepening with every passing second. Outside, the wind stirred, rattling faintly against the windowpane. But here, in this still space, I felt nothing but the ghost of her touch and the undeniable truth that something between us had shifted. And though she had pulled her hand away, I knew it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a line we were both dangerously close to crossing. The air between us was restless, alive with something neither of us dared name. I could still feel the echo of her touch, still see the way her eyes had held mine too long. But just as I leaned ever so slightly closer, just as the moment threatened to unravel, she broke it. Her voice came softly, almost trembling, though she tried to steady it. I should stop. The words cut through the silence, thin and fragile, like glass on the verge of breaking. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened, my heartbeat pounding harder in the quiet. She wasn't looking at me anymore. Instead, her gaze fell to the floor, to the safety of anywhere but my eyes. I shouldn't be here like this, she whispered again, almost to herself. Her hand gripped the side of the table, as if she needed something solid to hold on to. Her shoulders were squared, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her strength. And yet, she didn't move away. She could have stood up. She could have left the room, put distance between us, closed the door and ended it all in one decisive motion. But she didn't. She stayed there, so close I could still feel the warmth of her presence, so close her perfume lingered in the air between us. If she truly wanted to stop, why hadn't she left? Her chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath drawn with effort. When she finally looked at me again, her eyes weren't cold. They weren't dismissive. They were conflicted, full of the very thing she was trying to deny. I should stop, she repeated, but this time the words faltered, as though even she didn't believe them. The lamp flickered slightly, its glow wrapping the edges of her face in tender light. She was fighting herself, I could see it. The motherly boundary, the years of experience, the voice inside her telling her this was wrong. But there was another voice too, quieter, pulling her closer despite it all. And in that moment, I realized her words weren't a wall. They were a plea. Not for me to back away, but for me to tell her what she couldn't admit aloud. Her lips pressed together again, her fingers tightening on the table's edge. The silence returned, heavier than ever. She had spoken the warning. But her body betrayed her. She wasn't moving away. She was still here, closer than she needed to be. Her words hung between us like smoke, thin, fragile, threatening to vanish. I should stop. They echoed in my head, but they didn't match the truth in her body. She was still here, still close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath in the air. She hadn't stepped back. She hadn't let go of the space between us. I leaned forward, not recklessly, but gently. My voice came low, almost a whisper. Then why are you closer? The question stopped her. Her eyes widened, just slightly, as though I had spoken the very thought she was afraid to admit. She drew in a sharp breath, and for a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The room fell utterly still. The hum of the lamp. The faint tick of the clock. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Her gaze locked onto mine, and in that silence, everything we had avoided saying was laid bare. I could see it, the storm inside her. The resistance, the fear, the pull. Her lips parted as though she wanted to argue, to push me away with words. But nothing came. Instead, she swayed ever so slightly toward me. Not a step, not even a full movement, just the smallest betrayal of her restraint. As if her body had answered before her mind could catch up. I didn't reach for her. I didn't dare. All I did was sit there, letting my words hang, giving her the space to decide. And still, she didn't retreat. Her throat tightened as she swallowed, and I saw the faint tremble of her hand resting on the table. She wanted to stop. She told herself she should. But here she was, leaning toward me, her eyes softening in a way I'd never seen before. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "Then explain it," I murmured back. "Because right now, I think you do." Her breath hitched, her shoulders lowering slightly as though the weight of her struggle was too much to carry. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, and what I saw there left me silent: surrender, fear, and something dangerously close to longing. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. But we didn't need to. The closeness itself was louder than either of those things could have been. She had said she should stop. But here, now, she hadn't moved an inch away. If anything, she was closer than ever. For a long moment, we just sat there, caught in a silence that felt impossibly fragile. My words still lingered in the air. "Then why are you closer?" She hadn't answered, not with words at least. Her eyes had said enough. But then, something inside her shifted. She exhaled slowly, like she had been holding her breath for too long. Her shoulders softened, no longer rigid with conflict. And before I realized what was happening, she leaned toward me. Not to kiss me. Not to do anything reckless. She simply rested her forehead against my shoulder, letting her weight fall just enough to close the distance. The sudden closeness sent a rush through me, but I didn't move too quickly. I let it be what it was: quiet, fragile, real. My arm found its way around her, gentle and steady, not pulling her tighter but simply holding her as if to say, "You're safe here. You don't have to explain anything." Her cheek pressed against my chest, and for the first time that night, I felt her truly breathe. Slow, unguarded, as though the fight inside her had finally eased. The rhythm of her breath synced with the quiet thud of my heartbeat, and I closed my eyes, letting the weight of the moment sink deep into me. There were no words. None were needed. The lamp's golden glow wrapped around us, the only witness to what had unfolded. Outside, the world carried on, cars in the distance, the faint rustle of leaves, but here, in this small corner of the night, everything else had faded. I wanted to ask her what this meant. I wanted to promise her something, anything, to prove that what I felt wasn't fleeting. But as I held her, I realized words would only break the spell. What mattered wasn't what we said, but what we allowed ourselves to feel. Her hand lifted slowly, brushing against my arm where it wrapped around her. A small touch, light and almost trembling, but it sent warmth spilling through me. She didn't look up, didn't speak, she just stayed there, choosing closeness over distance, comfort over fear. And in that silence, I understood something simple but powerful: this wasn't about rushing toward a confession or demanding answers. It was about the courage of allowing ourselves to be near each other, even when everything else said we shouldn't. I held her a little tighter, not enough to bind, just enough to let her know I wasn't going anywhere. And for the first time that night, she let herself be still in my arms.